Imagine the Israelites. This story given to us in the book of Exodus. And they're brought out of Egypt. They are brought into this wilderness. They're going to a promised land. They're going to a mountain to worship their God. They get into the wilderness and they run out of food, like right away. You know, in faith, they come to God and they're talking to Moses and they say, we're going to die. So God very graciously and faithfully provides manna on a day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out basis, that they continue to come back to him over and over and over again. Now that they've learned that lesson, they go on and they're going further into the wilderness on their way to the mountain, and they run out of water. So faithfully they come back to God, and they've learned their lesson from the manna, so they come to him and they say, we're going to die. Why did you do this to us? So God very gently and very faithfully provides water at his own expense. So then they're brought to the mountain, and they've learned their lesson now, so they're surrounding the mountain, and the cloud of God's glory covers the mountain, and they look up. They're called to prepare themselves to meet their God, to stand before their God. They're not allowed to touch foot on this mountain, and they come up at the foot of the mountain, and there's thunder and glory. Moses goes up the mountain. He speaks with God. A few days go by. Those days turn into weeks. That's a long time for him to be gone, and they're just kind of fiddling around at the base of the mountain while this cloud and lightning and thunder is covering the mountain. And 40 days go by and they haven't heard anything from Moses, and they're like, what happened? Like, we need to figure something out. How do we pacify this God who's on the mountain? What do we do? And so they build an altar, and they're like, if we don't do something, we're gonna die like Moses died on the mountain. Eventually Moses comes down. There's more rebellion. There's more just like fear. We're going to die if we trust ourselves to God. But finally, God brings them to the promised land. And they're standing there and they're looking off into the promised land. And this is everything that God has promised. And they send people out into the promised land to go check it out, to go observe this place that God's brought them to. And they come back and they say it's everything that God said it was. And there's really big, strong people who live there who aren't going to want us to come in, and the Israel in one accord goes, we're gonna die. They walked through the wilderness and they sowed seeds of unbelief to their flesh the entire time. They reminded themselves over and over again that they were coming up against crisis after crisis after crisis, and they could die at any moment, and they were afraid and they were insecure. They believed it over and over and over and over again. So when they got to the Jordan, they reaped corruption. They didn't get to go into their Sabbath rest, their life, their promised land. But how could it have been different? What if they had learned the lesson of the manna that God provided? So when they came to the water, they were like, do you want to give us water again, God? And when they came to the mountain, they're like, yeah, we'll wait as long as you want us to wait. I mean, you've been faithful so far. And when they come to the Jordan, they'd be able to say with Joshua and with Caleb, our God is greater than the enemies that live in there. And so in faith, we will follow him wherever he goes. Where we sowing seeds of faith to the spirit or to the flesh, is where we're going to reap.